Now, to formally open our summit, please join me in welcoming Craig Cowdrey. Craig's passion for solving complex problems has taken him from law to diplomacy to the military to co-founding Sonder. As CEO, Craig drives the organisation's strategy and culture, leading a team that are really trying to realise an incredibly bold vision: global support through the right care at the right time. Please join me in welcoming Craig.
Well, thank you, Jamila, and welcome everyone to Sonder's very first summit. We're so glad that all of you can be here. I want to start by actually just giving a round of applause to Jamila for sharing a very personal story and the lessons she's taken away. Thank you. I want to thank all of you who've taken time out to join us here in person, a couple of hundred people here in this room. We've also got about 1,000 people dialed in online, so a warm welcome to all of you as well. I want to thank in advance for a fantastic day ahead, the speakers that are taking part. I want to thank the team from Sonder and from all of the team here at ACO who've already helped to make this such a special start to our first summit. And of course, I want to thank all of you. The reality is that you all have really busy jobs. You have really important roles in helping your people and your organisation with everything from everyday challenges right through to crises. And you're doing that in a really complex and difficult environment that's only gotten more difficult over the last 10 years or so. And I'll be talking through a little bit of scene setting that will be more than familiar to many of you. And talking about how we at Sonder and together with our partners are really helping to drive an effort that we call getting ahead of the curve. The reality is that curve, when it comes to mental ill health and impacts on the population, for employees, students and the broader communities, is already at a really difficult point. Its trajectory is looking like it's getting worse and worse, but we don't need to let it do that. We can arrest it, we can work together to really stop that curve getting out of control by getting ahead of it. Now, the reality is we also come from different backgrounds. There's people here from different industries, different levels, from CEOs, board members, down to people literally on the front lines of what we're dealing with in this country. We've had people fly in from around Australia, people dial in from around Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and a lot of the issues that we're going to be talking about really affect people around the world. It doesn't discriminate, it's across borders. Now, with that in mind and the stresses that you're all under, and noting that it can be hugely rewarding work to be on the front lines of tackling these issues that are so important to real human beings, to the economy, to your companies, to universities, to insurers, all the people that we have in the room, can be hugely rewarding, and it is important work. It also can take a great toll. It can be frustrating, it can be lonely, it can be difficult, and sometimes and often you're fighting forces that are outside of your control in the broader population, outside of your organisation, outside of your university or school. You're doing this in this complex legal environment, psychosocial hazards legislation, for example, which I know everyone's more than across and is busy tackling. But today we want to really make this about you. And echoing some of Jamila's comments, we want to create a space where you can come together as peers across industries, across regions, to share the lessons that you've learned, to receive lessons from others, to build lasting connections that you can hopefully take forward, and to share actionable insights that we've learned through our time at Sonder, working with our partners, and also for us to take insights from you to take forward in our journey. So I want to start by looking at the last 9 years or so and drilling into a little bit more detail about what this battle has been that we've been up against. And I use the word battle not just because I served in the military, but because I do see it like that. We're fighting an enemy, an insidious enemy. And it's often outside of our control, and it's everything from the negative impacts of social media, for example. A pandemic of sorts we unleashed on the world without really thinking about what the impacts would be. Now, this is perhaps a drive-by at Meta, Facebook as an example, but their mission was to connect the world. And they have done that incredibly successfully at a practical level, and there are many benefits to it. I know I'm in touch with many people that I wouldn't be otherwise. But we didn't think about the level of connection. Loneliness continues to spiral out of control. I've got a statistic we'll talk about later. The pandemic, of course, the health pandemic of COVID, changed the world significantly, and we're still feeling the lasting impacts of that, and we're not going to see the impacts of that, especially on younger people, for years to come. Cost of living continues to be a real and meaningful challenge. Housing, all of these issues that are outside the control of people in this room, and they're things that we need to tackle nonetheless. Now, that's pretty negative doom and gloom, and some of the stats will paint that picture as well, but I think it's important for us to be honest and to face these things directly, to set ourselves up to get ahead of the curve of what will happen if we don't take a stand. Because if the people in this room don't, then who else will? You have the opportunity, you have, I would say, the obligation to be forward-leaning in this space, and I know you all are, from knowing many of you. And it is great to see so many familiar faces and to meet new people as well. So let's take a quick trip back to 2016. Why 9 years? Well, 2016 is when Sonder was founded, so it's a little bit selfish, but let's take a look at back 2016. So to set the scene, it's only 9 years ago, but I know to me it feels like a long time ago. Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister. Remember him? TikTok was just the sound a clock made. Believe it or not, TikTok hadn't launched yet. 2017 is when TikTok came out. It's been that pervasive and persistent in sort of growing. Pokemon Go? Recognise anyone? People chasing Pikachu through parks? I say people, it wasn't me, of course, but, other people. No one in this room, I'm sure. Now, if it feels like a long time ago and like a different world, it's because a lot has changed, and I've touched on some of the dynamics that have occurred over that period. The speed at which society, technology, work, study is changing is at breakneck. And it's hard to keep up with. And now we've got AI coming in. We've got a fantastic session later on about how AI is shaping the future of work, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest in that session in particular. But the challenges that have emerged have only just intensified. Now, a very quick and hopefully simple chart. On the left-hand side, distress, anxiety, and stress as a percentage of adults, and this is Australia-focused. You can see the sources at the bottom here, going from 10% to 30% of the population. On the right-hand side, we're going to look at burnout and aggression and what that's done. So if we start with looking at psychological distress, so these are serious disorders. We've seen a steady increase from about 11% to just under 14%, so a significant increase over this period. Anxiety disorders. This isn't general anxiety, which is high. This is anxiety disorders, have increased from 2014 at about 14% to about 17.5%. Stress. And I could probably ask, most of you would be able to answer what these ones are before the actual name comes up, because you'd know these statistics so well yourself as you see the trajectory climbing at different rates. But 20% to about just under 55%, that's over doubled stress levels as a percentage of adults in Australia. And switching to the right-hand y-axis, burnout. Jamila spoke about this, I think, really articulately and compellingly about what burnout is. So you can see it was on a climb up through 2016, 2018, took a dip before COVID, and that was the last relief we had. And from there, it's been on a steady upwards trajectory, looking like Mount Everest, going up high like that. Finally, we have customer aggression. It's a big topic of conversation in the community for good reason. A lot of people in this room are literally on the front lines of trying to combat what is a really difficult situation, and especially affecting younger people who are manning checkouts, who are manning counters and cafes, who are dealing with people remotely through contact centres, but still victim to this type of aggression, Of course, these aren't just wellbeing challenges, there are legal risks as well, and we're operating in an environment where there is an increasing compliance requirement. But too often what we've seen at Sonder, and what we've been on a mission to help change in this community, is that the systems that have been in place wait until a crisis before they step in. They can be reactive, generic, and just seeking to tick a box of a base level compliance requirement. We would submit, and we know based on the data that we have over the last 9 years, that this approach doesn't work. It costs health for individuals, it costs productivity, it impacts trust, and sometimes it can even cost lives. Now, the costs are being borne by individuals and organisations alike. So to throw some statistics at you as well, again, to help set the scene, hopefully it's not too many that I'm throwing out, but 77% of people say they feel lonely at least some of the time This is a point-in-time statistic, but it's part of that increasing trend through some of the dynamics I spoke about before. In the student sector, 41% of students report a mental health condition, but only 1 in 5 of those seek actual treatment. Only 1/4 of people feel comfortable navigating the healthcare system on their own, and often there are the support mechanisms there available, including for earlier intervention, but people aren't comfortable or knowledgeable to be able to access it in a timely fashion. And when they do try to access it, often they might not be able to get to it because of cost or availability. 60% of Australians have delayed a GP visit for those reasons. $39 billion, it's a big number by anyone's measure. In Australia, that's the cost of just mental ill health to the Australian economy. I would argue that's conservative when you think about all of the indirect costs as well, and Jamila spoke a bit about productivity as well. More than 1/3 of workers' comp claims are psychological injuries, and they cost on average 4 times more than a physical injury claim. And we know that when there's a physical injury claim, it's more likely than not that there'll also be a psychological injury occurring related as well. There are also unplanned absences and regrettable attrition, staff turnover, students dropping out. That is costing the economy, costing organisations and costing those individuals significantly every year. Now, this is what I spoke about before. Oops, my mistake. This is what I spoke about before. So if we stretch out to 2030 on our conservative projections based on what's going to occur, not really knowing, of course, what else might happen in the world, and we're all hoping for positive change, but, you know, I didn't even talk about the sort of political situation and uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty around the world as well. This is what will happen if we don't step in and get ahead of this curve. It's already in a difficult position. Now, again, this is doom and gloom stuff, but like I said, I think it's important that we're honest with ourselves and with each other about the landscape in which we're operating. And it's only if we do that that we can navigate a path forward together, starting with days like this, in other forums as well, where you can take those connections forward, take those lessons forward, and get excited and proactive in your organisations, garner that support amongst your colleagues, and to do what is required. Now, for me, this is personal. So I grew up in the Kimberleys. Anyone been to the Kimberleys? Hands up. Thank you. And I'm assuming there's a few online as well. So the Kimberleys in the northwest of Australia, Broome, the main town that I was born there and I grew up there. And it's a beautiful area, as you can see from this shot here. Red dirt meets white sand, meets beautiful turquoise water. And it's a beautiful place in its culture and mixed cultures as well, and communities. But it has its struggles. It has significant health challenges. It has social issues, drug and alcohol abuse, and a rising level of community and customer aggression. And the Kimberley region and Broome, where I grew up, is not alone in this, of course, and this is happening in many communities around the country and around the world. Growing up there and later at work as a corporate lawyer, in the military and as a diplomat, I saw a lot of good and bad. I experienced hardships and I experienced conflict, as we all have, but I also saw incredible resilience, generosity and courage. I learned that people, no matter where they are just trying to do their best. They want to provide for their families, support their colleagues and contribute to their communities. Now, Jamila said she doesn't like to be self-indulgent. I don't either, but here are some photos just to paint a picture of that area that I grew up in. The left-hand side is me as a little baby in mum's arms, 1981, giving away my age, and my two older brothers on the banks of the De Grey River in the Pilbara region. My family, two older brothers, my mum, dad, bottom right-hand side, and not all of my first cousins on the top right-hand side of my mum's side, but about half of them. And yes, I know all their names. So when I look back at my experiences as a corporate law in the military, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, lucky enough to work in New York at the UN, throughout China, based out of Hong Kong. You know, I had a terrific time, and the military, focusing in on that, it was an incredible experience, and I recommend it all the time to people who are interested or considering it. I made lifelong friends. I learned so much practically, emotionally, and I lived a life filled with purpose. But I want to share a story about a challenge and a formative experience that I had quite early in my career in the military. Going back many years, I was 22 years old. I just graduated officer training from the Royal Military College, Duntroon. I'd arrived at my first unit to command about 30 people, 30 men in an arms corps unit. Now, I was full of beans. Young, as I said, naive, no doubt, confident, and ready to prove myself to the world. I marched in as it's called, and so I presented into the unit. And within the first couple of weeks, I had an encounter with a sergeant. Now, for those who don't know, a sergeant is technically a lower rank than an officer, a lieutenant as I was, but has been around 15, 20 years, critical role in the military, very experienced, very respected. But the sergeant came up to me in one-on-one and said, so, what's your background? And I said, oh, well, my background, Sarge, is, I'm from Broome, I've got 2 brothers. He said, no, I mean, like, where are you from? Where are your parents from? I said, okay, well, my mum's from Broome. She's, met my father, and that's where I grew up. And he interrupted me and said, no, what colour are they? And that's when I, stiffened up. And I answered on autopilot. I said, well, my mum's Chinese Aboriginal. Her father immigrated from Hong Kong in the 1930s and was a pearl diver in Broome. Met my grandmother, had 9 kids, one of which is my mum, and met my dad. He's from Perth, but he has, Irish, English, Italian heritage, and I kind of just trailed off. And I wasn't. These were things that I was very proud to share often, and I was on autopilot, but the way he was looking at me was not a receptive face. And he glared at me and said, so you're a real mongrel then. He then proceeded to say some horribly racist things about my mother and about me, which I won't repeat here, for my own benefit as well as yours. And then he said, and you expect us to follow you? And I was shocked. Adrenaline flooded my body. It was fight or flight. I froze actually initially, and then I fled, and I walked away quickly. I was so taken aback. This wasn't something I'd experienced before. Where I grew up, everyone kind of looked like me and was ethnically ambiguous, as I've said, and as I like to say. And also, this person was somebody that should be respected, and they were bullying me to my face, and I even outranked them. So it really shook my faith in the military initially, but also in myself. I joined the army because I thought it was the ultimate merit-based organisation where the only colour that mattered was green, your uniform, and where, courage of conviction and hard work and talent was what mattered, not what the colour of your skin was or your parents was. So from there, I really hit me hard. I started avoiding training activities and exercises, avoiding this individual. I started getting nervous speaking to the men under my command, which had never happened before. And this person kept making comments, subtle, direct, sometimes in front of people, and junior soldiers would avert their eyes if he did it. I felt embarrassed that it was happening. I felt embarrassed that I couldn't do something about it, that I didn't do something about it. I didn't want to report it to my superiors so they could do something about it. And so I was stuck and had nowhere to turn. And then I got lucky. Warrant Officer Cole Turner, who had been one of my instructors during officer training, posted into the unit. This is a seasoned veteran in his mid-50s, technically lower again, more junior than a lieutenant, but very senior and experienced operator, and knew me well. And one day he took me aside as he was having a rolled-up cigarette out the back of the vehicle shed and said, "Sir, I've heard what this sergeant's been doing. That is not part of the army that I know. It's not part of our beliefs. It's not part of what we value. And if you don't stand up to him, you'll be afraid your whole life. Furthermore, you are an officer. You are a leader. Your job is to stand up to people. The army's job is to stand up to people who do harm to others. You need to sort this out." And so I took those words and I was inspired, had a bit of steel in my spine, and I took aside that sergeant the next day in a room and I said a lot of things to him. But what I ended was, if you don't stop this right now, I'll charge you under the Defence Force Discipline Act and I'll have you marched out of this unit and the army in disgrace. Now, I was never going to change this person's beliefs and values, but I did change his behaviour. It stopped immediately, and I didn't hear about it anymore to anyone else either. My confidence returned. I was able to learn from the experience. And I should say, and I want to say, that was the only time in the military that I encountered that sort of thing. Not before, not since. An incredible unit I was in, terrific people that I still maintain close connections with to this day. But what were the lessons that I took forward out of it? One was just how quickly confidence and trust and belief can evaporate if you're mistreated and you don't have support, how lonely I felt and how isolated I felt without having support. Secondly, how powerful it can be when someone steps in to assist you, but to empower you, not to take it out of my hands. Now, Cole, trust me, this guy could have taken it out of my hands and sorted out that sergeant in his own way, in the old school way. But he didn't. He empowered me, that then set me up for a lifetime and a career that would have otherwise been potentially quite different. Third, it reinforced that resilience isn't about just putting up with hardship. It's about going straight through it and doing it with support at the right time, to be able to be stronger on the other side. Now, this is what Sonder's about. As I mentioned, systems wait often until people break. We want to be there earlier with early interventions that are trusted, that can help people in a way that can even change lives, just as Cole Turner's words changed mine. So these are the lessons that shaped Sonder. We wanted to create something different, something holistic, something proactive. My co-founders and I, Pete Bernheim and Chris Marr, started this business because we wanted to be effective in a way that used cutting-edge technology combined always with human expertise and empathy, that builds trust, intervenes early and does so in a human way. Since launching in 2016, we now have 1.3 million people that entrust their care to us through hundreds of partners across various sectors in Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom, some of which are included up here. We work with these organisations to co-design, to implement and to support people in a way that's effective for those individuals and for their organisations. Over the last year alone, we've delivered 300,000 episodes of individual care. That's 300,000 times that people that have received support in an effective way. Here's some quick stats on the impact. 56% of our members accessed help when otherwise they would not have. So the work we've done with their organisation has meant that thousands, tens of thousands of people haven't slipped through the cracks. They've received support. Everyday issues right through to crises. 59% of members report improvement in focus. 77% of mental health cases are resolved without clinical treatment, which means we're getting to people early and thereby avoiding many of them proceeding to a clinical level. 78% of cases involve multiple issues, highlighting the need for a holistic whole-person approach. When we assess somebody and assist somebody, we're looking at the presenting issue, the driving factor, but anything else in their life as well that might be occurring that we can also assist with. And we've delivered proven reductions in unplanned absence and regrettable attrition. Now, a very quick explanation for those who aren't aware of the Sonder platform. From left to right, starts with one app, simplified entry point instead of a complex landscape of point solutions, streamlines people into one place to gain assistance. We build trust through proactive notifications, everything from a traffic jam and a train outage to a flood, a fire, a protest, a police operation. Also, wellbeing check-ins and tools that builds trust with them as well, mitigates organisational risk, allows us to unlock comprehensive triage and assessments as the next stage, third bubble. What I mean by that is comprehensive because people trust us to disclose information to us because we've built a relationship with them at lower thresholds. That allows us to build comprehensive care plans for people and put them into health programs, whether that be in our platform, through our digital programs, through our own psychologists, care workers. And we have partners as well that we're able to send people to for psychology, for medical and further crisis support if a safety issue. But behind the numbers and the product are, of course, real people in our support centre, in our in-person responder network. We've got a selection of those here today. Please drop by and see them during the breaks. We've got our medical director, Dr. David Little. We've got nurses, counsellors, psychologists, social workers, our care specialists, frontline, initial point of assessment. And of course, it's real people out on the ground. Take Chloe here as an example, McDonald's worker, not her real name, and this is not the person, to be clear, but this is a real case. So Chloe, a few weeks into her job at McDonald's, late at night, was sent out to deliver food to a customer in a waiting bay. As she approached, she saw they were intoxicated, loud, she felt uneasy and unsafe. She delivered the food and went back in. That was okay, but it shook her. She thought, maybe this job isn't right for me. 1 a.m, she opened the Sonder app and within a few seconds she was speaking to a real human being about what had happened. That support team provided her with guidance on how to raise this with her manager, taught them how to use our safety tools both on and off shift, and gave her the reassurance to be able to stay in that job and to do so confidently. Now, this is happening at scale with McDonald's. We have 20% of their crew in Australia active on the Sonder platform, 40% in New Zealand, 80% of store leaders. And what really excites McDonald's and licensees and us as well about this partnership is these are predominantly young people. So it's not only early intervention in a case of mental health or physical issue, it's early intervention in their life and can drive these people on a different path and a different journey than they otherwise would. I mentioned 80% of store leaders at McDonald's are on Sonder and use it. Now, managers carry a heavy burden in their own role, but often supporting their people as well. A lack of time, often a lack of experience, and sometimes lack of training to be able to help, certainly with more sophisticated challenges. Now, absences, ill health, it causes time lost, it causes disruption in the people and the locations they're managing, and it bears a heavy emotional toll. I've spoken to managers who said they haven't slept because they've given advice to somebody they thought has suicidal ideation, and they weren't sure if they'd given the right advice. So we provide support to them too, a very big focus on allowing them to lead with care, never outsourcing leadership to partners, to Sonder or whomever, but supporting them to lead with care and to do so without burnout themselves. Now, I want to say we're not stopping here at Sonder. We are heavily invest into continual innovation and building the future of care, personalised, preventive, matched with individual and organisational needs. It's my pleasure to announce 3 key things today. One is that we're launching advanced analytics for all customers in the next couple of weeks, which I'm sure will be received really well. Secondly, we're launching a new product called Absence Assist. Absence Assist more directly targets absence in a way that provides people immediate care and support, also allows them to get back to work faster. Secondly, we're launching a product called Team Safe. Safety's always been in our DNA as a business. Now we're leaning into it more for at-risk staff, especially in light of these heightened and ongoing customer aggression. We want to tackle these issues directly together with our partners. These are coming soon. Our Chief Product and Technology Officer, Stephen Reid, will take the stage shortly, give you a sneak peek of what these look like. So here we are at Sonder's first summit. We're building the future of work through prevention, early intervention and effective holistic response. A lot of words there. And it is a complex area. But you'll be hearing sessions throughout the day about managing psychosocial risk effectively, importantly for the person and for the organisation, but also because of compliance. Leading through change, and change is not going away, that's going to continue. Tackling customer aggression, future of work with AI. And all of these are connected to this theme I spoke about how do we get ahead of the curve? How do we go from reactive to proactive, from illness to prevention? How do we, as the leaders and the people with the opportunity to do so, get on the front foot for the benefit of our people and our organisations? Because we know that if we lift people, we will lift organisations, and if we lift organisations, we'll lift entire communities. Thank you. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce to the stage our Chief Product and Technology Officer, Stephen Reid.
Thanks, Craig. Stories like Chloe's really bring it to life. And they're so easy to relate to. Whether it's one of our kids starting out in their first job, someone we know going through a tough time, one of our team members struggling, or even ourselves. My first job was at the UK equivalent of Bunnings. I was working in the pricing team, sticking pricing labels on the shelf. It feels like a long, long time ago now. But there are 2 things I can remember from that time that feel like they happened just yesterday. The first one was getting my first paycheck. I felt like the richest person alive. I immediately did the math to try and figure out what I could buy with my newly created wealth. And I called around to a few of my mates to see if they wanted to meet up at the local McDonald's. That pride I felt when I said, "Lunch is on me today, boys." Within a few moments, I'd splurged almost half of my first paycheck. Even adjusting for inflation generously, I was earning less than $10 an hour in today's money. The second thing I remember was one really busy Saturday in the store. I'd been called to the checkout to help check a price item for a customer. The customer had said that the sticker on the shelf was lower than what they'd been charged at the till. And it was my job to go and check that. They were already grumpy, frustrated about having to wait. I had to go all the way to the other end of the store to go and check that item, find that price. I searched high and low, up the aisles, down the aisles. I couldn't find it for the life of me. My tail between my legs, I had to go back to the checkout to go and ask the customer to come and help me find it. All the way through the store, that customer told me how bad the customer service was, how awful of a job I was doing. They told me I didn't deserve to work there. I went home that day and I felt like crap. I couldn't shake it. That notion that someone, a complete stranger, could talk to me like that, it really stung. I ruminated on it for days and weeks. I was restless at night. And looking back now, I was totally unprepared for that time, that job. It wouldn't be until 15 years later, when I experienced symptoms of burnout, finally reached out for help, that I learned about tools like cognitive behavioral therapy and other tools. I wish I had known about them when I was there in that first job. Boy, they could have helped me at that time. Because when we think about well-being and safety, it's not binary. People don't suddenly flip from being fine to being unwell. It's a continuum, from healthy to coping to struggling to unwell. And it wouldn't have taken many more of those situations like what I faced in my first job for me to start slipping down through this continuum. But there's the challenge. Traditional models of care often get involved far too late, when someone's already well down that journey, when you're in a crisis management situation, late stage intervention. By then, often the damage is done, both to the individual and to the organisation. And it's well proven that earlier intervention can make a difference, can lessen the acuity of the issue that individual is facing, shorten the duration that individual is being impacted for. And as Craig highlighted, the costs of intervening too late are immense for people and for organisations. The challenge is in catching those signals early. And that's where data can play a really valuable role. Through data, we can shine a light into blind spots in an organisation where we otherwise would struggle to see. Every day at Sonder, we parse more than 495,000 data points about our members. That's more than 500,000, that's almost 500,000 signals about an individual, whether that's as simple as an app open, someone looking at content, someone engaging with a training program, completing a survey to diagnose their well-being, or switching on one of our safety tools. Every day in our data, we see markers of circumstances like Chloe's. That data streams through our system securely and privately. But what does it actually look like? How can we use that data to identify situations like Chloe's and bring awareness to the organisation and help people like her? Let's walk through an example of what we see in the data when situations like Chloe's occur. We oftentimes have got a ton of really useful and important context about a person engaging with Sonder. We'll know where in the organisation they work, their division, their subdivision, and we know where they're based. That helps us spot patterns. Each one of the squares on the chart behind me represents a team, and we can start to look at those teams and see how patterns emerge. And this is an example of what most organisations start out looking like. It's pretty green. Folks are doing okay. But as psychosocial risk starts to develop, that's when the data starts to change. We start to see those early warning signs. More app opens, more people starting to search within the app, more people engaging with content. This might be due to increased incidents of customer aggression in a store because a new pub opened nearby. It might be because international students have started to arrive for the new year, the new semester, struggling with a language barrier, feeling alone. Or it might be triggered by an organisation announcing a change to how they're going to be operating, how they're going to be structured, and the anxiety of job loss. So what happens when these signals aren't acted on? That's where we can start to see psychosocial risk build in the data, way before traditional tools like engagement surveys would even have an awareness of this. What we're looking at here on the screen is the results from DAS 21 surveys within our app. DAS 21 helps us understand the depression, anxiety, and stress that individuals are facing. This is a real example. This is from a professional services organisation that is one of our customers. And you'll see the results are pretty consistent up until March 2025, but it starts to change from April onwards. What we start to see is the red bar starts to grow. Those are the results that are showing concerning outcomes in the DAS surveys. And the green bars start to shrink. Those are the healthy results. So what happened? This organisation announced a change in the way that they will be operating, a change in their organisation in April 2025. When we drill down further, what we can start to see is a sharp rise in folks experiencing anxiety and stress. What we're seeing is people worried about their jobs. What we're seeing is the early warning signs of calls for help. It'll be months before these kind of signals might get picked up by an engagement survey, by increases in unplanned absenteeism, by resignations, by workers' compensation cases. By that point, the risk has already manifested in the damage done, both to the individual and to the organisation. And with that intervention, we start to see it play out. Members start contacting Sonder more frequently through our call or chat facilities. And the acuity we identify through our triage process also starts to rise. And that's exactly what Craig meant by getting ahead of the curve. When organisations wait, we start to see the acuity rise. But when we intervene sooner, the results can be impactful. When people get support at the right time, the results speak for themselves. This also is a real example from one of our retail clients of what improving absenteeism looks like. For this customer, more than 80% of members who completed a survey and engaged with Sonder reported a positive experience. 83% reported that Sonder helped them get back to work sooner, and almost 1 in 4 said that they wouldn't have turned to help if it wasn't for Sonder. The impact of this is real. Across our customer base, we consistently see improvements in absenteeism, and we help individuals get back to work more than a day sooner than they would otherwise. That translates into fewer frontline teams being stretched and left short-staffed, fewer services disrupted, and even more people able to manage their health and return to work faster. And for businesses, those small shifts add up. This retailer saved $648,000 from reduced absenteeism, and that means they delivered, just from absenteeism alone, 124% return on investment from their investment in Sonder. And that's before we factor in things like productivity improvements and reduced turnover. And that's why acting early isn't just about care. It's actually about delivering. It's also about performance and delivering a business outcome. Now, many of our customers have asked to see more of the insights we have available, because getting ahead of the curve requires more than just data. It's about understanding those insights that can inform decisions and determining what actions you need to take. And that's why starting next month, we're going to be sharing a lot more of that analysis with you. You'll see greater granularity across the data sets that we'll provide, richer data sets, understanding of different parts of the organisation. And to make those insights really practical, we're going to be organising them around the main questions that our customers often have. Are our people safe and well? What are our current and emerging risks? How is Sonder helping us? And what impact are we seeing? And how can we improve further? By structuring insights this way, leaders get not only the clarity on just the data, but the decisions they need to make and the actions they need to take. Now, I really love data, and I could talk about it all day, but let's zoom out just for a minute, because data is just part of the story. There are two halves to our proposition at Sonder: wellbeing and safety. Combined, they cover the full range of psychosocial risks that an organisation might face. Our diagnostics and insights, which I've just been talking about, are always at the core of everything we do, helping us understand each member's context, helping us personalise and tailor the service to that individual. And we built a proposition in Total Care that can help a broad range of organisations track and manage those psychosocial risks. And as we continue to build out that proposition, we're going to provide more options to be able to tailor the proposition to meet customers' needs, to be able to select which product modules are most relevant to your organisation, and even what parts of your organisation would benefit most from particular product modules. But I want to talk for a moment about a couple of those modules, a couple of these new modules that Craig mentioned earlier. I started talking earlier about how earlier intervention can really help lessen acuity, reduce the impact, reduce the time period that someone's impacted for. And that earlier intervention can also help build resilience, so that the next time that individual is impacted, they've got the tools at their disposal to help them manage. But how do we know when that moment occurs? Oftentimes, it's that first time you wake up and think, it's just too much. I can't, not today, I can't today. That moment when you roll over in bed, reach for your phone to text your manager and say, I'm not going to be making it in today. And it's in that moment when the right care could actually be the most useful. And that realization was what led us to develop Sonder Absence Assist. By providing members with simple, supportive experience when reporting unplanned absences, we ensure that individuals receive access to care right at that moment when it might be needed most. And by providing a tailored care plan, where relevant, we can help ensure that those individuals build the skills needed to build resilience that can sustain. So I'm delighted to announce that Sonder Absence Assist will shortly be available to all of our customers as an optional product add-on. Absence Assist shows how we can support individuals in one of those moments of need, at the earliest moment of need. But what about managers and leaders? They also need confidence that they're ahead of the curve on safety. We had one of our insurance customers in the office the other day for a workshop. He told me about a freak weather event where he and his team were deployed to this area where there'd been flooding. He'd been deployed for days so that the insurance assessors could come in and assess people's claims on their insurance so that people could get the money to repair their houses after the storms. But the rains kept on coming. The floodwaters continued to rise. And one evening, Tony got a call from his boss with a simple question. Are our people safe? Is what he asked. Tony told me, he said, I answered immediately yes. But the only way I knew the answer to that question was because I was sitting in the pub having a steak and a beer with the entire team around me that evening. And that's why we built Team Safe, for every leader who's had to ask that question and has not been certain of the answer. Thank you. So TeamSafe combines Sonder's command center and emergency responder network with real-time visibility for managers and leaders, whether supporting lone workers, managing remote teams, or overseeing staff in high-risk locations. As Craig said earlier, the world we're operating in is only getting more and more complex. And the costs of waiting, the costs of reacting too late are high, but when we get ahead of the curve, the outcomes could be transformative. I've shared a bit today about how Sonder is using data, insights, and new product modules to do just that, to recognize those, they catch those early signs, intervene sooner, and support people before a moment of struggle becomes a crisis. But it's not just about dashboards and about new product features. It's about people. It's about Chloe taking those first shifts in a new job. It's about me at age 16 when I was struggling with self-doubt. And it's about every one of your people who deserves to be safe, to be supported, and to be able to thrive. And if we can get ahead of the curve together as leaders, as organizations, and as a community, those small acts of care can create a lasting impact, where we can change not just someone's workday, but the trajectory of their life. And that's Sonder's promise. That's the future we're building. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you so much to Stephen and before him to Craig for setting the scene for us for the rest of the day and for sharing your vision for the future ahead. I took a few things away there. I think, Craig, that reminder that how we empower a team member is not to step in and take over and make the decisions for them, do it for them. It's actually to give them the tools to do it themselves. It's definitely one I need tattooed somewhere on my body to remind myself of every time I respond to a team member. I think we'll all take that one away. And we so appreciate, Stephen, your love of data. That moment, there was just this extra little something in your voice of like, I love data. I need to admit it. I need to tell everyone just how much I do. Thank you so much. Complex challenges, folks, require sophisticated solutions. And it's good to see, I think, that Sonder is absolutely rising to that call.